Chapter 5, Part 2 of Breaching the Marianas, The Battle for Saipan by John C. Chapin. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. D+8 to D+15, 23 to 30 June. These attacks on caves were a tricky business because of orders not to kill any civilians who were also inside many of them, hiding from the fighting. Graf recounted his experiences further. Throughout the campaign we were taking prisoners. Seldom were they Japanese soldiers. Instead, Korean or Chamorro laborers, both men and women, who mostly worked in the sugarcane fields and processing plants. Chamorros were natives of the islands, while the Koreans, of course, were brought over as forced labor. Approaching us, hands up and smiling and bowing, the Koreans would say in understandable broken English, "Me Korean, not Japanese." Some Japanese civilians were also captured. The Japanese tradition was that the male members of the family were the dominant members. Several times when we tried to feed newly captured women and children first, the men would shove them aside and demand to be first for rations. A few raps to the chest with a rifle butt soon cured them of that habit. As the sick, scared, and often starving civilians would emerge from their hideouts, there were many pitiful scenes. One sad incident I recall was when a captured civilian Japanese woman came up to me. She was crying, and when she got close to me, she started hitting me on the arm and pointing to my pack. I did not know what she wanted until an interpreter came over and explained that she wanted some food and water for her dead child. She pointed to a wicker basket that contained her dead infant. I gave her what she requested, and she placed the food and water in the basket so that the child could have nourishment on the way to meet the baby's ancestors. Physical conditions of many were pitiful. Every illness that we had been briefed on was observed: leprosy, dengue fever, yaws, and many cases of elephantiasis. Most of them were skeleton thin, and they had no nourishment for many days. Many were suffering from shock caused by the shelling and bombing, and fright because they did not have the vaguest idea as to what we would do to them. Civilians caught in a war that was not of their making. One of the captured persons impressed Graf so very much that the memory was vivid many years later. A Japanese woman, obviously an aristocrat, probably a wife or mistress of a high-ranking officer, was captured. She was dressed in traditional Japanese clothing, a brilliant kimono, a broad sash around the waist, hair combed, lacquered and spotlessly clean. Although, as Graf remarked, she knew not what her fate would be in the hands of us, the barbarians, she stood there straight, proud, and seemingly unafraid. To me, she seemed like a queen. Over on the west side of Saipan, the 2nd Marine Division had a memorable day on 25 June. Ever since the landing, the towering peak of Mount Tapachaw had swarmed with Japanese artillery spotters looking straight down on every Marine move and calling in precisely accurate fire on the American troops. Now, however, in a series of brilliant tactical maneuvers, with a battalion of the 8th Marines clawing up the eastern slope, a battalion of the 29th Marines, then attached to the 8th Marines, was able to infiltrate around the right flank in single file behind a screen of smoke and gain the dominating peak without the loss of a single man. Meanwhile, back at Nafatan Point, the battalion of the 105th Infantry assigned to clean out the bypassed Japanese pockets had had continuous problems. The official Army account commented, "The attack of the infantry companies was frequently uncoordinated. Units repeatedly withdrew from advanced positions to their previous night's bivouacs. They repeatedly yielded ground they had gained." The stalemate came to a climax on the night of D+11. Approximately 500 of the trapped Japanese, all the able-bodied men who remained, passed undetected or sneaked through, as the Army later reported, the lines of the encircling battalion. The enemy headed for nearby Aslito airfield, and there was chaos initially there. One P-47 plane was destroyed and 2 others damaged. The Japanese quickly continued on to Hill 500, hoping to reunite there with their main forces. What they found instead was the 25th Marines resting in reserve with an artillery battalion of the 14th Marines. The escaping Japanese were finished off the following morning. On the front lines in the center of the island, General Jarman, now in temporary command of the 27th Infantry Division, took direct action that same day, D+11. An inspection by two of his senior officers of the near edge of Death Valley revealed that battalions of the 105th Infantry were standing still when there was no reason why they should not move forward. That did it. Jarman relieved the colonel commanding the 106th and replaced him with his division chief of staff. 19 other officers of the 27th Infantry Division were also relieved after the Saipan battle was over, although only one of them had commanded a unit in battle. While these developments were taking place in the upper echelons, the junior officers in the front lines had their own, more immediate daily concerns. As the author recalled, I had worked out a pre-sleep routine which I followed every night without fail. Before I lay down, I would make careful mental notes of where the company command post, CP, was and where my squad leader's foxholes were. Then I would work out the rotation of the watches with my CP group. Next came a check of my carbine to make sure it was in perfect operating condition. When all this had been done, I'd lie down, adjusting my helmet to serve as a pillow. Last, and most important, was the placing of my weapons. My carbine lay across my body so my hand would fall naturally on the trigger. My combat knife was stuck in the ground where my right hand lay, and my grenades were carefully arrayed at my left hand. Then I'd drift off to sleep. For the next several days, the 27th Infantry Division probed and maneuvered and attacked at Hell's Pocket, Death Valley, and Purple Heart Ridge. On 28 June, Army Major General George W. Greiner, who had been quickly sent from Hawaii upon the relief of Ralph Smith, took over command of the division, so Jarman could revert to his previous assignment as Garrison Force Commander. The 106th marked the day by eradicating the last enemy resistance in the spot that had caused so much grief, Hell's Pocket. The 2nd Marine Division, meanwhile, inched northward toward the town of Garapan, meeting ferocious enemy resistance. Tipopali was now in the 6th Marines' hands. The 8th Marines encountered 4 small hills strongly defended by the enemy. Because of their size in comparison with Mount Tapachaw, they were called Pimples. Each was named after a battalion commander. Painfully, one by one, they were assaulted and taken over the next few days. Near Garapan, about 500 yards to the front of the 2nd Marines' lines, an enemy platoon on what was named Flame Tree Hill was well dug in, utilizing the caves masked by the bright foliage on the hill. The morning of 29 June, a heavy artillery barrage as well as machine gun and mortar fire raked the slopes of the hill. Then friendly mortars laid a smokescreen. This was followed by a pause in all firing. As hoped, the enemy raced from their caves to repel the expected attack. Suddenly the mortars lobbed high explosives on the hill. Artillery shells equipped with time fuses and machine gun and rifle fire laid down another heavy barrage. The enemy, caught in the open, was wiped out almost to a man. To the right, the 6th Marines mopped up its area and now held the most commanding ground, with all 3 of its battalions in favorable position. In fact, since replacement drafts had not yet arrived, the 2nd Marine Division had all 3 of its infantry regiments deployed on line. Thus it was necessary for its commander, Major General Watson, to organize a division reserve from support units. The pressure on manpower was further illustrated by the fact that, in this difficult terrain, 8 stretcher bearers were needed to evacuate 1 wounded Marine. In addition, there was, of course, the deep-seated psychological and physical pressure from the constant, day-after-day, close combat. Everyone on the island felt the weight of fatigue settling down. On the 4th Division front, the drive forward was easier, but its left flank had to be bent sharply backward toward the 27th Infantry Division. By nightfall on 28 June, the Marine Division's lines formed an inverted L with the 23rd Marines and part of the 165th Infantry facing north, while the rest of the Army Regiment and 2 battalions of the 24th Marines faced west. This strange alignment was a focus of attention when each battalion was issued its nightly overlay from Corps headquarters showing the lines of the Corps at that time, so that friendly fire from artillery and supporting Navy destroyers would not hit friendly troops. Once again, enemy planes raided, hitting both the airfield and anchorage. As usual, enemy night patrols were active. The end of the saga of Nafatan Point, way to the rear, had come the day before, 27 June. The Japanese breakout had left almost no fighting men behind there. Accordingly, the battalion of the 105th Infantry at last overran the area after enduring a final banzai charge. The soldiers found over 500 enemy bodies in the area, some killed in the charge and some by their own hand. D+15, 30 June, marked a good day for the Army. After fierce fighting, the 27th Infantry Division finally burst through Death Valley, captured Purple Heart Ridge, and drew alongside the 8th Marines. Holland Smith gave due recognition. No one had any tougher job to do. The gaps on the flanks with the 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions were now closed. In doing so, the Army had sustained most of the 1,836 casualties inflicted upon it since D-Day. The 4th Marine Division, however, had suffered 4,454 casualties to date, while the 2nd Marine Division had lost 4,488 men. The Corps front now ran from Garapan past the Four Pimples to the 4th Marine Division's left boundary. Here it ran sharply northward to Hill 700. From there it ran to the east coast. Central Saipan was in American hands. Most of the replenishment supplies had been unloaded. The enemy had begun withdrawing to his pre-planned final defensive lines. The Army's official history summed up these days' costly victories this way. The battle for Central Saipan can be said to have come to a successful end. End of Chapter 5, Part 2.